Estamos ao vivo. Boa noite, pessoal. Estamos começando então mais uma noite aqui com as atividades do Fique em Casa Use Debian. Hoje temos a presença do líder do projeto Debian, né, o Jonathan Carter, que vai falar um pouco com a gente. Temos também o Paulo Santana e o Antônio Terceiro aqui com a gente.
Boa noite, pessoal. A gente vai... Então, como o Daniel falou, o Jonathan é o líder do projeto Debian atual, né? Ele foi eleito faz bem pouco tempo. Ele vai fazer uma palestra para a gente com uns slides que ele preparou. E vocês podem fazer para perguntas em português, se quiserem, ou em inglês também. Se fizer em português, aí a gente traduz aqui e faz para ele, tá? Sou o Jonathan.
No final, né? As perguntas.
Isso, no final.
Lembrando que ele tá na África do Sul, né? Lá são 11 horas da noite que ele falou pra gente. Ele tá 4 horas na nossa frente, por isso a gente antecipou um pouco hoje para fazer das 6 horas, para não ficar tão tarde para ele lá. Mas a partir de amanhã a gente volta ao horário normal das 8 horas da noite. Pode seguir, Terceiro.
Então é isso, vamos começar. Jonathan, thank you for coming, for attending this remote talk, and we are eager to hear from you.
Thank you. It's the first time I'm doing a remote talk, so it's interesting for me. So welcome, lovely people of Brazil, and to FiqueEmCasaUseDebian. I hope I pronounced that right. It's 11 p.m. over here, so 5 hours later than over there in Brazil. I've been up since early this morning, so also getting tired. I'll drink some coffee now and again just to try to keep me going. So tomorrow it marks 2 weeks since I became DPL. Lots of incoming information, so it's been a case of information overload for me, trying to process what everyone wants and how to get started with a lot of things. So I just put together a few slides that covers a mixed collection of Debian things. So it's basically just a mixed bag of Debian stuff. Maybe some of those slides will lead to more questions. There'll be time for questions at the end, so you can ask either in Portuguese or English, and it will end up translated with me, and I can try to answer. So traditionally, the new DPL will explain a bit about the role of the DPL and give some information about themselves. So here goes. So first about the role a bit. So did I skip ahead in my notes? I'm so sorry. Externally, the DPL is the official representative of the Debian project and works towards building relationships with external entities. And internally, the DPL talks to internal teams and assigns right to them in the form of delegations. So there's many teams that exist in Debian, and certain teams have a bit more rights than normal teams. And once those teams have more rights, then they're called a delegation, not just a normal team. So in Debian, DPL can't force anyone to do something. It's in our constitution that volunteers can basically choose what they're interested in working on and work on that specific area. So to a degree, it's also the DPL's job to try to motivate people and try to get them to do things to make the project better. So DPL term lasts 1 year, and the election occurs annually. So every year there's a new election, and either a new DPL or a DPL term is extended for another year. And only Debian project members, that's called Debian developers or non-uploading Debian developers, only they are allowed to run for DPL, and only they are allowed to vote in the Debian elections. Okay, and just like any other role in Debian, the DPL position is also a volunteer position. So some friends, when they heard I became DPL, first thing they asked me is how much money you get. But just like other positions in Debian, it's completely volunteer, and there's no money associated with it. And the DPL role is also not meant to be heavy-handed. What that means is the DPL isn't the kind of boss who gives orders to everyone and tells everyone to do. The DPL just has some extra responsibility to help take care of a project. I think I have some extra information in the next slide. Yes. So this is just a summary of what it says on that webpage that I linked below. So the DPL's powers is to appoint delegates or delegate decisions to the technical committee. It lends authority to other developers, make any decision that requires urgent action. So if there's a urgent decision that needs to be taken, we don't need to have a big vote or a discussion about it. There's actually someone who can make choices when things get really crucial, and make any decision for nobody else's responsibility. So how it usually works with the delegations is the DPL doesn't usually get all the decisions. They delegate it out to everyone else. And for the areas that's not delegated, there the DPL can still make decisions. And in consultation with the developers, make decisions affecting property held in trust for purposes related to Debian. So on that last point, an example of property held in trust would be something like our debian.org domain or our Debian trademark. In those cases, they are held for us by software in the public interest, or just SPI for short. They're an American nonprofit that acts as a trusted organization for Debian. Okay. So my slides are a bit text heavy, so I thought of just adding some Debian photos in here and there. In this slide, this is an outdoor session that we had, a bath at DebCon 15, where we could all sit together outside in the sun. And I think many of us are missing those days when we could still do that. Because right now, most of us are stuck in our home in self-isolation. I don't know how bad it is in Brazil, but back here, we weren't even allowed to leave the house until a few days ago. Now we're allowed to go do walk outside between 6 and 9 in the morning, and that's it. So it's still very tough. So in the previous slides, I covered what the DPL is. So now I'm going to cover a bit more about who the DPL is, so a little bit more about myself. So I'm a 38-year-old South African. I was interested in computers since a very young age. I'm not sure if you can see in a small thumbnail there. This is what I learned programming on initially. It's called a ZX Spectrum. It's a little computer that only had 48K of memory, but this is what I learned on as a child. I used to buy magazines and type in basic programs on it. That's not the one I used, but it's one like that. So I first tried out Linux in 1999. I think it was Red Hat 5.2 or Red Hat Linux 6. And I really hated it because it just seemed so useless. I didn't like the command line back then. My sound card didn't work, so I couldn't listen to MP3s. My display card didn't work properly, so it couldn't play video. My dial-up modem didn't work, so I was just completely unimpressed and said, this Linux thing is rubbish. And I think it was a year or two later, I got a CD with Red Hat 7.2 on it, and suddenly I could play video, I could connect to the internet, the audio worked. Even the audio player looked like Winamp that I used in Windows back then. So I was really impressed with the whole progress that have been made over the years and how they've actually improved such a system that seemed broken to me to be so good in such a short time. So then I got into, I figured I learned about Samba and Apache and about servers, and I thought, wow, this is amazing that one Linux machine in the office can do all these things. And I wanted to get it into schools and then kids how to install Linux on computers and to set up these small office services. Maybe it could help them in their work, or they could set up a business when they leave school where they do consulting on these things. And via my local Linux user group, I got involved with the Shuttleware Foundation, and they said they wanted to install Linux in schools too, but to learn the curriculum. They wanted to install complete labs. So I got involved there and volunteered with them, did contract work with them, and eventually worked there full time. And that's where I got to learn about Debian than Red Hat. And my boss at the time introduced me to Debian Unstable. And when Ubuntu came out, I took a long detour in the Ubuntu world. and only in the late 2000s, like 2009 or 2010, thereabout, I started coming back into Debian and started contributing and became a DD in 2017. So as a DPL, I'm a relatively young DD, only being a DD for about 3 years, or I think it's 2.5 years, but yeah, about there before I became a DPL. And that's me. So just to show you where I am, I saw a video on YouTube earlier this week where they asked a bunch of people in a certain continent just above your continent, where they asked people, show any country on the map whatsoever, and they couldn't. So they would just, so just in case people don't know where Cape Town is, it's a bit more south than most of Brazil. So I'm down there in Cape Town. So if we all go to the beach, then we can wave at each other. And if the world was actually flat, then maybe we could see each other on a nice day. So enough about me. Let's move on to the state of Debian. I just need to catch up on my notes. Okay, so currently Debian is actually quite a healthy project altogether. Not only as far as free software projects go, but if you compare it to any other project as well, we currently have 1,012 active project members and many more external contributors also contributing to the project. So I say active project members because in Debian, we actually keep track of who has recently made contributions. And we have a team called MIA, that stands for the Missing in Action team. They will contact someone who hasn't been involved or who you haven't seen otherwise in the project in a while, and ask them, are you still there? Are you still active? Are you still interested in Debian? What's going on? And what happens is if they're no longer interested or busy or doing other things in their life, they can go into a retired state. And when they do that, we say that they're in emeritus. And once they are in that state, they have the option to come back to the project as well and become active again. But at least we have an idea of how many Debian developers are actually actively involved in the project at any time. It's not like some other project that say, oh, but we have this many contributors, but many of them aren't even around anymore. And then we have 238 people who are Debian maintainers. Debian maintainers are people who can upload their own packages or who have access to upload a certain amount of packages directly to the Debian archive without supervision, but they're not project members yet, so they can't vote in elections and they don't get a debian.org email address. So 238 of them at the moment. Maybe soon many of them will become project members eventually. And so far in 2020, we've received a total amount of contributions of 1,136 that we can track. I mean, from that many people that we can track. It's sometimes difficult because some contributions are just impossible to track. Like, for example, even hosting the session tonight is great, but that doesn't, the work that the people in Brazil is doing isn't making it into the tracker for that. So it's difficult to get all the statistics from all the things that's happening in Debian. But at least from technical contributions that are trackable, it's 1,136 individual people who have helped so far. We have over 100 teams with 16 of them being delegated. It's just constantly amazing to me how many teams there are in Debian. It ranges from all the translation teams to the packaging teams. In DebConf, there's a lot of teams. Between all the local group teams, it's just the categories of teams is a long list. So it's kind of difficult to keep track of, but it's good that there's so many people who's interested in the project and spending so much time to make things work. Also, some of the teams have the same people in same certain core of people in a lot of groups, and there's also a lot of teams that only has one person in them too, which can be good or bad depending on how you look at it. In Debian, we have this philosophy that even a team of one is better than technically one person doing alone, because the team structure we have makes it easier for other people to join if it's a team of one person and it's just the individuals. So we encourage people to do things in teams as far as possible these days. And for more statistics on members and contributors, there's a link at the bottom of that page. So packages statistics. The source packages are now in total, it just hit 100 gigabytes. We should actually have some cake for that or celebrate that. When I first started using Debian, the first time that was still on Debian 3, all the binary packages fit on 7 CDs, and then all the source packages fit on another 7 CDs. So I can remember we used to burn this big stack of CDs every time someone wanted a copy of Debian. But these days, it's so big that optical media just doesn't cut it. So if you take the AMD64 binaries and Arch all binaries, that currently makes up testing, that totals 604 gigabytes. So if you had to write that to CDs, by the time you finished writing all the CDs, it's probably close to the next release of Debian, because it's just way too much. On Blu-ray discs, the new Blu-ray discs, you can fit 50 gigs on a disc. So that means you could roughly fit the whole Debian on around, what's that, like 12 or between 12 and 14 Blu-ray discs. Not that bad, but at the price of what the Blu-ray disc cost, you can buy a little 1 terabyte flash disk from eBay and also write it on it for about the same price, and then you can reuse it again. So I think the idea of distributing on optical discs is kind of dead now. We still build CDs, DVDs, and Blu-ray discs, but just the first few of them with the most popular packages on them. There's also a lot of work to be done. There's 221 packages up for adoption. Adoption is putting a package up for adoption is when a maintainer gets busy, or they're no longer interested in that package, or maybe they maintain that package as part of being employed somewhere and they don't work there anymore, so they decide to give it up so that someone else can take over the maintenance. And there's currently 221 like that needs new maintainers. If no one adopts it and the person moves on, then the package ends up without a maintainer, and it ends up being an orphaned package. So there's currently almost 1,200 orphaned packages that someone can grab and work on and improve and adopt. But between those packages, there's lots of packages that I think shouldn't even be in Debian anymore. Excuse me. They're just really old and not that useful anymore. Like I noticed there's OpenVZ packages that are orphaned, and it's completely obsolete. I don't think anyone will actually use it with Debian anymore. And there's newer things like LXC and Docker that has replaced it. So I think in those cases, it's better for people to go through the list and just file removal bugs so that it just gets removed from the distribution completely. There's probably a lot of work to be done there to remove some packages. Then what surprised me while I was putting together these stats was the amount of requested packages. I thought that's maybe like a few hundred, but it's close to 3,000 packages. So in Debian, we have a process where any user can file a bug called an RFP, which stands for request to package. And so if you find a piece of software that you think should be part in Debian but isn't, you can file a bug asking that someone packages that. And there's a staggering amount of them that exists at the moment. And I haven't tried to read through them all or saw what the common or typical one looks like, but there's also probably a lot of things that could be easily packaged, or bugs that probably can be closed by now. So also a good opportunity if someone is looking for packaging work or work to do in Debian in general, that's a good place to jump in and try to get a good feel for what's going on. And we have 1,320 packages not in testing, only on unstable or unstable. So, unstable or stable. So that means that this package possibly was unstable before and in testing, but for some reason it got removed in testing and got fixed in unstable, but it's not migrating back to testing for some reason. Maybe there's some blocker that's keeping that from happening. So I would suggest if you're a package maintainer, go to your QA page and take a look at that and see if you have any packages that doesn't migrate, because now and again I also miss that a package isn't migrating and someone points it out to me, and only then I notice it, but you can actually tell it on a QA page if you look carefully. Okay. So the next one is finances. So finances is really a difficult one for me. I'm not that interested in accounting and all the details about it and all the technical parts. I only got involved with accounting when I started my first small business, and I learned a lot, and I realized it's important to get right. Finances you can't mess with. There's no story that ends well that starts with there wasn't proper financial oversight, and it's an area in Debian I really want to work on this year and help improve, because it's currently way too complicated, and I'd like to get it to a point where any Debian developer can easily access the data and see where we stand at the moment and what's going on. The more transparency and oversight we have for finances, I think the safer we'll be and the better off the project will be. So I got the latest numbers that I could in terms of where we stand financially. At software in the public interest, according to the 2023 draft report that they have, we have $625,000. That's all strictly Debian, and there's $137,000 from all the DebConf totals if you count all the minuses and pluses together. So an assumption might be that this is all DebConf profit, but it's kind of complicated because sometimes money comes in SPI, but it comes out again via another trusted organization like Debian France or Debian Switzerland. So the totals is sometimes a bit off. You'd have to count them all together to get a proper picture. But that's currently the amount that we have at SPI that came in through DebConf channels. Debian France, I don't know. I didn't get a number from them. Although on my first day of the term, I got a very good email from the new president of Debian France. He has lots of plans and he wants to improve things a lot. So I'm very hopeful. Also SPI, I forgot to mention, they're also doing a lot of changes where they are upgrading their entire accounting system. For the last, I'm not sure how long, I think it's a year or so. They have someone who's paid to help keep their accounting up to date. So there's lots of, I feel a lot of hope for SPI and Debian France. But we'll see how it goes. I have a meeting with the Debian Treasurer team tomorrow morning, and we're going to catch up on a few issues and discuss things in the way forward. And hopefully a lot of good information will come from that. So if Debian Switzerland or Debian.ch, from their last report, they had 83,000 Swiss franc, or about 86,000 US dollars. And these are a bit time shifted because the one is from March this year, the other one is from December last year. But to give a rough total of at least how much money we probably have is about $850,000, which makes up about 4.6 million real at this moment. So that's a lot of money. And the reason why we have so much money at the moment, this is not normal for Debian to have this much money, is we got 2 big donations recently for hardware. Debian put out a call that we need some money for hardware improvements, and then surprisingly 2 big donors stepped up and both gave the amount that was needed for the upgrades. Now it puts our hardware team, the DSA, the Debian system admins, in a position where they have to do some careful planning and thinking and how they want to go forward. There's like different paths they can take, or should they do a little bit of both and see how it goes. At the same time, they can't get together for sprints at the moment, which is kind of unfortunate because a lot of planning is easier and nicer when you can write on a whiteboard and actually talk in person and argue it out. And online isn't that effective for that, but hopefully they can get together soon and give our hardware a complete nice upgrade so that we can cover more architectures and have less wait times for builds and have more runners for GitLab, because Salsa has grown quite big and continues to grow, and it'll be nice if we have proper infrastructure for every aspect of Debian that we need. Okay. So another photo. Here's a photo of FOSDEB mini Deb camp that we had earlier this year. This was on January 31st, when the global confirmed cases for COVID-19 was less than 10,000. Back then, this was still at 9,826. This was also the first day, the day the first case in Italy was confirmed. So that's how I knew it was still back. Then. At this point, we were also following the disease because we have DDs who are also our friends in China. But back then, we didn't yet imagine that we'd be dealing with this thing on the scale worldwide just a few weeks later. On that note, it's also nice to see that the Debian Med team has stepped up. They've had a COVID-19 sprint recently where they fixed bugs in Debian for packages that are related to COVID-19, like COVID-19 research packages and so on. So it's nice that Debian is also doing at least something small to help fight this virus. Slide 15. So onto local groups. A key part of my platform for running for DPL was local groups. Over the years at DevConf and at other events, people have talked to me saying that they want to get local groups to the point where it's the same as it was in Ubuntu, because I know lots of Ubuntu contributors, and at one point Ubuntu had really strong local group organizations, which I always liked, and I wish Debian had the same. So before I continue, let me first start with what is a local group. So local groups are groups of Debian contributors from a region. Local groups are well positioned to take care of local needs, like organizing events like install fests, talks, meetups, and translations. On the local group list, on the Debian wiki, it lists dozens of local groups in 38 different countries. I'd definitely like that to see that in more countries. Like in Africa, we have almost none. In my own country, we used to have one, but don't have one anymore. So I might even start one locally or try to get others to start one. There's 3 in Brazil. It's Debian Brazil, Sierra Debian, and Debian Curitiba. And some local groups have been extremely successful, resulting in either temporary or permanent trusted organizations being formed, like the case with Debian France or Debian Switzerland, and full-fledged DebConfs being hosted, like we had in Curitiba last year. I also want to emphasize that it's nice having those 2 local teams as trusted organizations that can handle Debian assets like funding, but it's definitely not a requirement or even something that we want for all local groups, because becoming a trusted organization would mean that you would have to register as a nonprofit in your country, and it comes with a lot of paperwork and responsibility. And if you don't meet those needs, then closing it down might become complicated and might need lawyers to get involved in more paperwork. And we have one such case happening at the moment, potentially. We're still not sure. We're still figuring it out. And it's not really worth it to go through all of that. So I don't think many people, or every local team needs to be a trusted organization. And actually, ideally, we should just have a handful worldwide so that we can at least handle transactions quickly when we want to pay volunteers or return money, which is currently a point of frustration with our setup that we aim to fix. We might also look at the one person who ran for DPL this year. His whole platform was based on that we might start a Debian Foundation, where we actually have bank accounts and cards, and we can do payments whenever we need to, and it's quick and it's not a problem. But that might take a while still. I think it's a good idea. I think we'll look at that this year, and maybe we'll end up setting up 1 or maybe even 2 different Debian foundations, both in North America and in Europe over the next year or 2. Maybe it could even take 3 years. I'm not sure, but I think that could be a key part in helping us keep track of our finances, how much we spend, and how much we have. Because trust me, finding that information is way too difficult at the moment, and it shouldn't be. I think it should be completely transparent. Anyone who donates to Debian or is a member of the project should be able to see what's happening and what our accounts look like. So back to local groups. Even local groups help attract enthusiastic new contributors and help make Debian a more diverse community. If we want to solve diversity, having more supporting more local groups everywhere will definitely help. I'm quite sure of that. Let's go back to my notes. So in Debian, we have something that's called a derivatives team. They keep track of all the Debian derivatives, and the work that they do is quite amazing. They track the status and health of every derivative in Debian. They have a script that goes to check through the archives, checks that the website is still up, a bunch of things like this. And then when something goes wrong, it emails the distribution and tells them that there's a problem. Like, let's say it turns out that their release file isn't signed anymore or something like that. It will send them an email automatically and tell them there's something that you need to fix. We also have what's called the Debian Derivatives Census. Paul Wise has done so much good work in that. And it's a page where you can go see a list of all the distributions and who's a contact point and why they exist, and where the website is, and it's pretty good. And I was thinking that we actually need something like this for local groups as well. Just someone or a group that checks in maybe at least once a year with local groups asking, do you still have enough people in your team to maintain this? Do you need money? Do you need web hosting? Is there something we can do for you? So it's not someone who will have control over the teams or give them orders or be like an oversight or some kind of overlord who keeps things intact. It's just someone who's there to help and support local teams, and so that we know which is still active and which is not. And also coordinating and sending things like stickers and pamphlets and a bunch of nice things to help get the local team started, because it's a lot more interesting having a new local group started, and you can give the new people who come along stickers and information and USB disks or whatever, than if you just have nothing, maybe a web page to show them. So I think it's worthwhile spending some money for the Debian project, generating all these things. The local groups can then also decide if they want to. Maybe they want some money for beer and pizza, and they can sell the stickers for donations that they can use to help fund additional projects locally. I think local groups is also good for. The local group team could help with that on-ramping of new local groups to help them get bootstrapping, because Debian has so many procedures and ways of doing things, and someone who starts a new local group might be a group of users, not necessarily Debian developers, who might not be familiar with all the Debian procedures or who to ask for when they want to get hosting, or if they want a new wiki setup, or who knows. So I think having a team that acts as like a welcome contact that can help and mentor a bit, and this could maybe just be a mixture of existing local team members who do that, but I think it's good to have a known process for that could work. And ideally, I would like this team to have a budget too, so that they don't have to wonder, should I ask for the DPL? Can we afford this? There should just be a budget where they can decide, we're going to we have this much money to help like print stickers, or maybe they want to pay travel for a certain amount of local team members from around the world to represent local teams at DebConf, that kind of thing. So I think that could make a difference. So this is still just a thought at this stage. I'll post more to the Debian project mailing list about it, and then maybe we can have some discussion about it, and maybe there's people who step up and will be willing to be part of a local groups team, or even a local groups team delegation. So this was a stickers table at DebConf 19. Really nice selection of stickers that they had. I'm just posting some pictures again because it's nice. And here was also the nice local team that the DebConf local team that hosted the wonderful DebConf we had in Curitiba last year. It was really nice seeing all the local Debianites there. Oh, and my notes, I almost forgot about this. I'm glad I noted it. I liked the, in their slide on the picture, they have the text. We chose to do this not because it's easy, but because it is hard. So that's often a sentiment in Debian. So onto Debian Social. This is a new project that's been running for a few months, and it's been in the making for a bit while before that. This is a project where we host a bunch of social websites where Debian people can communicate with each other, and it's not just social in the sense of here's a picture of my cat. The idea is that we can actually use these sites to collaborate better with each other. We're a bunch of sysadmins that host these services that might be useful for Debian. And these services also make use of a federation network called ActivityPub. It's a protocol where these services can talk to each other using these standard set of protocols and interoperate with each other. So you have a website where you can view videos on, and one with a microblog, and you can subscribe from the one to the other and see updates from one to the other. It's pretty good. So our first three services that we are running is PeerTube, Plamora, and Pixelfit. I'm going to tell you a little bit about both, all of these. I mean, a picture gives us 1,000 words. I wish I could give you a proper PeerTube demo, but I think we'll run out of time. So PeerTube is like YouTube. It's a site that lets you play videos. But previously, when we worked on sites that's not YouTube, like standalone video sites, every video site was its own little island on the internet. So you would have to subscribe to each one or visit each one to see if there's new videos. And it was difficult to discover new channels or new types of content. With PeerTube, because it's all federated on a network, that means that instances can subscribe to other instances, and they can subscribe back to you and to other instances. So you can get a very large variety of videos on the site, even though they're not all hosted on the site. And what's also great is that instances can cache videos for other instances. So, excuse me. And also, users who's busy viewing a video can share it to other users viewing a video via a protocol called WebTorrent. So that means you don't really need a fancy big content distribution network, which is often a problem for video sharing sites. You use your users and other instances of the site as your content distribution network. So it's very clever the way it works and the way that that they set it up. So in our instance, we currently have 1,379 videos. Most of this goes back all the way to DebConf 5 in 2005. We follow 9 other instances on the Fediverse, which I think it's one instance that uploads electronics videos. There's a few open documentary instances, and then a few other Linux and open source content instances as well. So far, we've generated over 2 million views. We have a few videos that's just insanely popular. I first thought it was a denial of service attack on our server. We checked and it seems legitimate. I mean, it's all verified by the network, right? We can't fake it, or because initially I decided we should count the views down a bit because it just seems like so much. But as far as we could tell, it's legitimate. So people on the Fediverse network seem to like our DebConf videos, and especially ones that have a security theme to it, and also things about video calls and SIP and yeah. So I think because of the lockdown everywhere, people are interested in some of those topics. So it's been proved popular. And so far, 2 beta testers have added local content to our PeerTube instance. It's not a lot yet. We hope that it will be a lot more once we take this more to a production level. Currently, there's 30 beta testers in total, more than 30 testers testing these Debian Social sites in total. And yeah, well, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. It's very late here. Let me see if my notes have something. Yes, so the idea is that eventually local teams will create content, and we'll have content in many different languages on our PeerTube instance, so that there's something for everyone to watch. And if a newcomer comes along, they can, while they're washing the dishes or doing work around the house or even at work, they can have some Debian videos playing in the background and learn by osmosis. So then there's Pleroma. Pleroma is it's like an open source Twitter clone. Or if you've used Mastodon before, it's very similar to that. And because it's on the Fediverse, you can also subscribe to PeerTube channels and see the videos come up here, or retweet a video from here. It's actually very nice the way that they've thought it out. The difference between Pleroma and Mastodon is that Pleroma has nicer moderation tools. It's very similar otherwise to Mastodon, but we like that the moderation tools is good, because if this does end up being big, then we're going to need to be able to mute certain users or mute certain instances just to protect our local community from any outside bad people, basically. Then there's Pixelfit. Pixelfit is an Instagram clone for the Fediverse. The idea is that during DebConf events, like Debian events like DebConf and mini DebConfs and all kinds of talks in local groups, when something is happening, you can take a photo and share it with other Debianites. Currently, lots of the photos and videos end up being posted to WhatsApp groups and Signal groups and Telegram groups, where it goes and becomes forgotten forever. And I think there's too many nice things that we might want to preserve and share and show to the world the nice things that we do. We used to have a gallery instance at gallery.debconf.org. It still exists, but the last time someone added content was some years ago. So I think the interface has become a bit old-fashioned for people, and they're not that interested in using it anymore. So this is something more modern and maybe familiar for people, which they might enjoy more. In this example, the picture I used, that's Vota and Tammy. They're both Debianites as well. They got married in February, so I took a photo and uploaded that. So congratulations again to both of them. So then we also have the collaboration between the Debian Social team and the DebConf video team. We're planning to have an online mini DebConf at the end of the month. So it will have a mini Deb camp between 28 and 29 May, and then a mini DebConf between 30 and 31 May. So my guess is that we'll probably have BOFs throughout, and then some sprints in the first 2 days, and then more talks like this one during the last 2 days. So more details will come to Debian announce soon. We were just sorting out the content team first, which should pretty much happen tomorrow, and then once that is done, we can send out the final announcement. But if you'd like to get involved, there's an RC channel called #mini DebConf Online on OFTC, and there's also a wiki page that's listed there that you can subscribe to and show your interest as well. So the next thing is something I was just thinking about. It's not necessarily, definitely not an announcement. I just have to say that before I show it. It's just that recently we have seen some more Linux on OEM laptops, which is great. There's the Dell XPS series, which you can get Ubuntu on, and now Lenovo has announced that you can get Fedora on basically the whole ThinkPad range as well, and that's pretty neat. I think as Debian users, we like that we can get Linux on laptops. Sometimes it's to avoid Windows tax in areas where you can do that, and also you kind of have an idea that Linux will work on a laptop. I was wondering when I saw about Ubuntu and Fedora, what it would take to get Debian on these, and if it's something that we would actually want. And I don't think we actually care. as Debian users, I mean, if we'd buy a new laptop and it would come with Debian, the first thing we'd probably do is take a few snoops around to see what they actually do with that image, and then we'd probably just wipe it and install from official media anyway. But I thought that it might be interesting to do a study of what it would take to actually install. What would it take for Debian to be ready as an OEM Linux system? And I think a lot more research will need to be done. But I made a list of just the first few things I could think of. And I think the first one is, it comes down to, I once heard from a Dell person that the markup that they make on laptops is so small that if they get one support call to the support center, the cost of dealing with that support call ends up being, it basically takes away the whole profit margin that they made on that one laptop. I'm not sure if that's even completely true. I guess we can take it with a pinch of salt. But however you look at it, support would have to be like something that they wouldn't have to care about. Like, I'm sure they don't want to get Debian support calls coming into them. At the same time, I as an individual don't have time to support some random laptop user who bought a new laptop who wants help with Debian. And I think in Debian, we don't want to be overwhelmed with that either. So that's maybe a difficult one. Maybe eventually there could be a kind of a drop down that says this is for advanced users only, or do you only get community support. Only choose this option if you know what you're doing. Because I'm sure if they end up getting a return, that's even a lot more damaging than just a support call. So then on the technical side, I'm sure what we'll need is some kind of OEM installer mode. This is where you install the system, you choose where to install it and everything else except for things like language and time zone, adding your users. And then once you reboot into the system for the first time, it will then ask you for those. So in Debian installer, it's possible to precede all of those, and it will keep asking those questions. And someone did work on an OEM config tool that will ask you these questions the first time you start up. But I checked this afternoon before this talk, and it doesn't seem to be in Debian anymore. So I think someone didn't finish it or abandoned it at some point. It might be a good idea to at some point finish up the OEM config tool that would allow this kind of thing. And then the other technical thing we'll need is a rescue partition, because laptops don't ship with installation media anymore. You have a rescue partition. If something goes wrong or you want to factory reset it, you choose an option that says there's usually a BIOS shortcut key that you press and it boots to the rescue partition, and you can reinstall your system from there. So I think these are probably the areas that would need fixing. And I think the OEM modes will be useful not only if for big companies using laptops, but I'm thinking more about refurbishment centers. I don't know what the case is in Brazil, but in South Africa, the refurbishment centers are hit hard by Microsoft. If they install one machine that has a slightly wrong license or key, like they want to close a place down, these people live in fear with refurbished machines. And I think for many of these, on a machine that's 6 or 7 years old, Debian is going to run better than Windows anyway, and you're going to get supported browsers and software for a bit longer too. So I think for refurbishment centers, it might be useful for them to have an OEM mode Debian where they can install it and give the laptop to the customer, and then when they boot it up the first time, it will ask for language and username and password and that kind of thing. So I think it's a good problem to solve, even if we don't necessarily want Debian on that kind of laptops in the future. But having the possibility exist, I think, will be a useful technical exercise. Motivation. Let me talk about motivation. So last year, I started keeping monthly activity logs for Debian, which did help a bit for motivation as well. But what was odd is the 1 month, towards the end of the month, when it came close to publishing my activity log, I noticed that I haven't done almost nothing in Debian the whole month. And I was kind of surprised of that, because Debian is kind of my biggest hobby and what I spend my most energy and time into. And being analytical, I thought, let me do some introspection and analysis and found out what went wrong. Maybe there was an argument I had with someone or a negative experience, and subconsciously that pushed me away from Debian. And after I did some, I looked into it a bit, and I couldn't actually find anything that happened that was wrong whatsoever. But I found that I was just more interested in other stuff for a while. I had other hobbies that caught my attention, that I got my head deep into, and also I spent some time with friends and family that I enjoyed, and I think that was good. And I think that's just the normal cycle of Debian motivation. Sometimes you'll get more motivated, sometimes your motivation will hit a plateau, and sometimes maybe there'll be some time where you're not interested in Debian at all. And I think that's just fine. Like some people think that there's something wrong when they're not motivated. I think now and again you just need to take a step away. It's like eating cake every day. If you actually ate cake every day for 3 days, no matter how much you love cake, you're going to want some real food after that. It's just not the same afterwards. So Debian is also, sometimes tell people that Debian is a bottomless pit of problems. And it's not that I'm negative or that I hate Debian, not at all. It's just that almost every problem that exists in computer science affects us. And there are many problems in computer science. And if you're a problem solver, you'll get attracted to this because it's fun solving problems and working on big, interesting problems. And it's also fun to be a hero when you solve a problem or two, and you get to be the one that fixes this for the big pool of users that Debian has. But it can be dangerous. I say they don't let the black hole pull you in. It happens to people that Debian becomes their whole life, that they spend more and more time on problems in Debian, and before they know it, they spend 40 hours a week on Debian, and later on more time than they do on their day job, and later on from the moment they wake up until they go to sleep. And if Debian takes over your life, it can become really dangerous, because if you ask any Debian developer if something ever happened in Debian that ruined their entire day, most of them will say yes, they've had a day ruined, at least one day ruined at some point because of something that happened in Debian. And it's because we take it so seriously, because it's such a big part of our life. And my advice is, have something positive, have other things in your life, have other hobbies that you can go to that will ground you, something positive. Like my dog, every day I get home from work, he's very happy to see me. That's like a constant that never changes. And having something positive in your life will help smooth out little things that go wrong. Like, I know it's easier said than done, because just like 2 weeks ago, someone said something really mean, and I was like grumpy for a few hours after that. And then I realized, you know what, this is not even a big deal. I should just forget about it and put it behind me. And that's easier to do when you have other things in your life to counter that with. And I think it's very important to be aware of that and make sure that you don't get into this place where Debian is just your whole life. And I know it's difficult because, like I said, that those problems, that bottomless problems, it's very tempting and it's very interesting, and there's always more information. It just never ends. It's just so big. So is that all I wanted to say on motivation? I think so. Okay, and then one last thing, Bullseye. That's the next Debian release, which is that's a code name for Debian 11. That will be released next year. So freeze is coming. It's like winter, that's always coming. Freeze is always coming. In mid-January or early January, depending on 12 January, the first freeze is starting that covers transitions and build essentials and essentials freeze. So by then, you'd probably want most of your features that you plan to get into the next version of Debian finished and done and dusted. And at least at the latest by 12 February. After that, it will just become increasingly more difficult. Also, note on getting new features in Debian. If you don't have the work that you plan or want to get into in time by then, don't stress too much about it. Continue to work on it, because what I've done in the past is when it came to freeze time, I became really depressed because I might have something that's 80% completed and I can't get it in, so I just abandon it for a few months. But that's actually a good time to still finish it up, because when a new release opens up again, then you can get it in early and get wide testing early on in the process, and it's completely fine. So don't let a freeze put you off from doing work. It can still actually be a very productive time to do things. And I'll end off with a nice picture from the DebConf group photo in Curitiba. This was a very nice DebConf, and it was nice actually meeting many of the Brazilians and probably some of you watching tonight. So thanks a lot for coming to see this talk tonight. It's the first time that I've done one online, which is kind of weird not being able to see the audience, but there's time for some questions. So if you want to ask something in either Portuguese or English, then it will get translated for me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you a lot, Jonathan. It was a very nice talk. I think everyone should be clapping at home now. I guess.
Thank you.
You'll never hear it, but we are. Pessoal, quem quiser fazer pergunta em português, pode fazer no chat aí que a gente traduz. Se não, eu tenho alguma que eu vou fazer enquanto a gente não chega lá. A primeira pergunta eu vou fazer é para ele falar para a gente um pouco como é a experiência. Ok. So we have a first question. Paulo, você pode pinar ela aí na tela? Yes, that one.
Debian package of the day. So I have a YouTube channel where I do a Debian package of the day. I really enjoyed making it. So a long time ago, we had it was a blog that was called Debian Package of the Day, where they take a package of a Debian archive and explain what it does. And I found it very useful when I started out, and I made some videos on YouTube that are similar to that blog. But they stopped a while ago because I just got too busy. I really would like to. I have a list of packages I want to cover, but I'm just too busy to do it. So I was wondering, maybe we should do at some point like with this month's videos that you guys are doing. Maybe we can have a schedule at some point with a list of packages, and then people can just each grab a package and make a little video about it. So because if 30 people do it, they just each have to make one video, and then we'll have a big selection of Debian Package of the Day videos. And that's something we can maybe do on the PeerTube instance as well. So I hope it will continue. It will probably be a while. If only I do it, it will be a while before that continues again. But I think if we make it a group effort, then we can actually continue that really quickly, and we can maybe cover videos in more languages even as well.
Nice. We have another one. What is the difference between soft and hard freeze?
I can't remember. I know hard freeze is just before the complete archive, because before Debian gets released, the archive goes into a state where it gets released. So the archive completely closes off and no changes can be made whatsoever. And the hard freeze is just before that. After soft freeze, I know some exceptions can be made. I'm just not sure which exceptions anymore. I usually look it up when soft freeze occurs. But usually, like at soft freeze, critical bug fixes can still make it in. Where after hard freeze, you have to start doing a stable release update to get the fix in. It's like there's like nothing you can do anymore. So it's like a gradual ramp up to how hard the archive is freezed. I just can't remember the exact levels right at this moment.
Faz a tua terceira agora.
Okay. What's the experience of running for DPL like? How is the process from your point of view?
Okay, so I ran for DPL twice, this year and last year. Last year, the experience was a lot of fun. Like I enjoyed it. I didn't think you were supposed to enjoy it that much. When I talked to the other people who ran for DPL, they said no, they didn't have the same experience as me. But last year we had 4 people running for DPL, and they were very chatty and very opinionated and had lots to say. And we had lots of arguments, and that made it fun because a lot of viewpoints came out and was explored. it's nice to see certain issues being addressed that haven't been addressed for a while. So when we have a few different people running for DPL and they're very passionate, I think it's good for the project. If we have an election like that every year, I think it's very healthy for Debian to have some competition and have multiple good candidates. This year we also had 3 good candidates, but both Sruti and Brian, they mostly focused around mostly single issues, and I think people tend to like the idea of generalist DPLs, but also for discussions, it wasn't that there wasn't so much to discuss or to disagree with or to talk of from the platforms. So what else did I want to say about this? Oh, also with the COVID-19 thing, I think many people who usually read the vote list and ask questions, they had other things on their mind and wasn't that focused on asking questions or entering in discussion and things like that.
I was showing the wiki page about the last election.
Cool.
I have a question too. Let me say em português first. Eu vou perguntar para o Jonathan sobre diversidade geográfica, porque como ele é da África do Sul, a gente não está, nós do Brasil, ele também, a gente não está na Europa e América do Norte. E a maioria dos contribuidores do Debian são dessa região, basicamente do hemisfério norte. Então, vou perguntar para ele o que é que ele pensa sobre isso também. So, Jonathan, you are from South Africa, and like us, you are in the South Hemisphere, and we have a lot of contributors from North America and Europe in Debian. We talked about this, about geographic diversity last year. We talked a little about that. What do you think about that? How can we talk about Debian or get people from South Hemisphere to the events in Europe, especially Europe, because there are a lot of Debian events in Europe, and how can we go to that? Because I can imagine that it's very expensive to you, like it's to us to go to Europe or North America, like United States and Canada, for instance.
Yeah, North America, I think it's flipped over for the two of us. For me, going to Europe is expensive, but US is a lot more expensive. But I think for you, it's the other way around. Probably, it's probably more expensive for you to go to Europe than North America. But I think improving geographic diversity, we should. I think the local groups thing could help there. Having more local groups, like if you look at DebConf, for example, you look at the amount of Brazilian people who go there and the amount of, like, for example, Taiwanese people who go there. That's not so bad compared to other areas in the world. And in both cases, they have good local teams. If we have more local teams in for example, Kenya and like in Africa, we're so underrepresented. It would be so nice to have more Africans in DebConf. And I think if we have strong local teams that are involved in the project and people feel that they're a part of the project, then they can start contributing more and start attending these big international events a lot more. And I think it's one way we can do it. I don't have all the answers yet of exactly how we would stimulate those local teams, but I think I remember in the Ubuntu days when the local teams were strong, just sending people packs of CDs and stickers helped motivate a lot of people to get involved and talk about it and start local meetings and stuff. And I think we can do that in Debian as well. I think we shouldn't be afraid to spend money on promoting local teams, because I think that will bring in a lot of fresh energy, and especially if we want to take diversity seriously in all ways, that's one of the ways we're going to do it. We're going to get more women into the project, more people that are not white. All kinds of diversity will improve if we put energy into the local groups project.
Terceiro, quer fazer outra pergunta? Você falou que tinha outra.
A pergunta do Thiago ali é interessante.
Are there plans for PeerTube to be in DI by Bullseye release date? I have no idea. I could ask Kibe, but so maybe I can explain what PeerTube is for the other people. So we have this a thing called tasks in Debian, where you can choose to install, for example, Debian Edu or a Debian server profile, and so on. And the idea was that all the blends would each have their own task in the Debian installer system. And then when you install it, will pop up a window that asks you which one you want to install. So you'd have a standard CD, and then you can just choose to which configuration of Debian you want to install based on the pure blend. I don't know why it didn't make in the last release, because I remember the feature was completed. I think it might have been a case where they finished it, but they missed some freeze date, and or maybe the translations wasn't finished because it was so late, and then they decided to postpone it. So I'm not sure, but the best place to ask is on a Debian boot IRC channel. If no one else does, I'll go ask them and tweet it somewhere at some point. But I'm not sure exactly if it will make why it wasn't in the last release, but I guess it might make it for this one. I'm not sure.
Terceiro? Alguma coisa?
Ok. Não, tô legal.
Jonathan, are you thinking about review some teams or make new delegations for the next months, or do you think everything is good in this area?
I know of some problems at least, and just like the derivatives team does a census of the derivatives, and like we want local teams group that does a census of the of local groups. Eventually, I want to go through all the delegations, contact each team, ask them, how are you doing? Are you okay? Are the people listed on your delegation still active? Are there any changes you need to make to your delegation? Just so that we know that at least in a 1 year period, all the delegations are pinged and see that they're still alive and good. I think that should be a standard job of a DPL, and maybe also some additional teams that take on a lot of responsibility. Some of them that ask for regular funding, maybe they should become delegations, because my idea is that teams who spend money should probably be a delegation, and instead of having to ask for money regularly, they should just have a budget and not bother the DPL with it, because it seems like the DPL regularly have to approve small amounts of money, and it just feels unproductive for everyone if that has to happen. So I think for at least teams who regularly spend small amounts of money, they should have a budget instead to deal with that. And that's one area that I want to focus on making teams into delegations.
Tem uma pergunta em português, terceiro. Mas aí é bem técnica, né?
As perguntas super específicas que não tem como o Jonathan saber a resposta de tudo.
Mas poder comentar isso com ele, que tem coisas que são bem específicas.
Yeah, so there's a very specific questions like why there is no alternative, etc. shadow implementations. Do you know anything about that?
Nope. I would guess that there's no need for there's a lot of external authentication methods like LDAP and Samba and the likes. You can even use SSH as an alternative to local logins, but I'm not sure why you need an alternative shadow implementation. But if there's a question, if you can answer that question for us, maybe why it's needed, then that might be interesting. So you can maybe comment that, and it can be shared.
Okay, there's another one that Paulo just pinned. Is you said that the OEM system you saw was not very much Debian-like. What do you mean with Debian-like in that case?
I'm trying to remember, what did I say? What did I say is not Debian-like, the OEM system?
Yes.
I don't think, maybe I was misheard. I don't think that's exactly what I said. I think what I said was that Debian users don't care a lot about having OEM on the laptops. Having Debian on OEM laptops, because they'll probably just end up, inspecting the image and then end up installing Debian from official media. What else could I have said? I don't think I said that. Maybe if they can rephrase or say again.
Maybe.
But...
So I'll say that in português. Então, o que ele falou foi que ele acha que a maioria dos usuários de Debian não se importam muito se vier Debian instalado no computador, porque eles vão simplesmente reinstalar de qualquer forma. Então, mesmo... eu lembro que ele falou que era útil, né, um computador que vem com Linux, porque você sabe que funciona. Então, que é o que eu fiz. Eu comprei o meu, veio com Ubuntu, eu dei uma olhadinha para ver o que tinha no Ubuntu, mas em seguida eu formatei e instalei Debian.
I talked with John McDougall sometimes, and he has idea about Debian certification, that LPI could provide something like that. And he tried to talk a little about that, make some partnership with Debian to provide a Debian certification. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds great. I think it sounds fantastic. I'm not sure what it will entail, making such a certification. I remember Ubuntu did that as well. It's called the LPI 199 certification, where you do it in combination of LPI 101 and 102. So you do those two plus 199, and then you're Ubuntu certified professional. I think it would be great if Debian had something like that. My guess is that we'd have to have a team of people work with the LPI to come up with a bunch of questions that cover an exam that you could do for Debian systems. My guess is it wouldn't have been much different from what the Ubuntu exams looked like up until recently. And my guess is that Ubuntu diverged a bit because they have snap packages now, and they have Canonical's own products that make up that. But yeah, maybe it would be really useful to have a Debian one, even in conjunction with the Ubuntu one, because then they could take some of Ubuntu stuff out of the Debian exam, out of the Ubuntu exam, and then maybe for Ubuntu you could have a combination of the two exams that make up the Ubuntu Professional. But we also have the chairman of LPI, John McDougall. He is very enthusiastic about Debian, and he comes to DebConfs, and you all know him. So he's probably a good person to ask about that and bring into the discussion, because he could tell us what the steps would be and the requirements would be. Then from our side, my guess is we'd have to put, I think it's a lot of work putting together that certification and all of the questions that make up such an exam. I know for the Ubuntu people, it took a lot of time and a lot of work to get that properly done. So we would have to have someone at least willing to step up and do the work and spend some time on that.
Do you have talk with other free software communities, especially from other distributions? And do you have some experience in this relationship with them?
Not a formal one, not from since I've been a Debian project leader. I do before that, because especially still with Ubuntu, because I know lots of Ubuntu people and there's lots of overlap between Ubuntu and Debian. I know some Fedora and Arch people too. I actually like Arch Linux a lot, and I like Alpine Linux a lot. Alpine Linux is interesting because they make really tiny binaries compared to Debian, because they use a small libc and strip out a lot. So if you want to make a small container, their packages are really nice. But part of being DPL, I joined I'm now what do they call it? An affiliate. I'm an affiliate member of the Open Source Initiative, and they have a monthly call where all the distributions, not all the distributions, but some of the distributions are on. And it was interesting being on that call last week and hearing what other distributions are doing and what the problem is. At the end of the call, I asked if I can post the notes that I made of the call to my blog, but they said because we didn't get consent and some people have left already, they said we can't get for that call, But for the next one, we'll get consent at the beginning of the call, and then I'll share some notes of what other distributions and free software projects are doing. On last month's blog report, I listed the projects at least because I thought that doesn't share any private information or anything that people said in the call. So I'll try to get more information out of that I can share to the public.
Do you want to try to answer that one question that's been there?
I would like to know why there's no implementation of new fields in etc Shadow. Okay, so that's about fields. And why there is no implementation of Argon, PB, KDF2, bcrypt as shadow alternatives with a cost field. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It sounds like a good idea to be able to do that, but I have no idea why we don't have that in Debian. So if someone's listening that could look into that or have any vague idea, then please let us all know, including I, and that would be interesting to know for sure.
Okay, I had some other questions. Let me see here. Do you have some expectations for this DPL term, I mean, the next year, in terms of the things you want to accomplish?
My biggest goal is just stability and making the community solid, because it feels like the whole last decade there's been one drama after the other, and I think some people deal okay with the drama, but for some others it's difficult to handle. Some people feel like a big emotional drain on certain issues, and some of it happened from externally from us, some happened internally into the project, and I just like to get to the point where we feel like things are stable and we can just focus on our work, do more technical work, do the things we're good at, bring out a great release next year that works well and everyone is happy about it, and people just feel happy focusing on the work and the thing that they care about, and that they're actually empowered to go ahead and do that. So I know it sounds very vague, but I think once you get the community right and people feel that they belong and that they are in control, then all of the other things will kind of fall into place. It's kind of like the core important thing in the project, I think. Oh, I see a comment from Utkarsh. He says, what's your favorite part about Debian? It's weird. I like uploading packages to Debian. It's fun. I like it. I know it's stupid because I know someone told me all that you're doing is copying and pasting code from GitHub, but it's nice. It feels productive and useful, and so from it, that's a silly part that I actually enjoy in Debian, but also all the people I've met, like especially the people on the screen right now, and including Utkarsh, who's watching from India. It must be like really late there. It's probably tomorrow morning by now. Yeah, meeting all the people. I'm looking at that photo of Debian Covid19 again, and it's just nice seeing all those faces and people who have just done such tremendous amount of work and spent their personal time doing great things that ended up benefiting so many people. And I think we have lots of unsung heroes in the community, and meeting them, that makes me happy, and I think that makes most other Debianites happy as well, and that's why we stick around and take all the punishment that we do, because it's not all negative. There is lots of positive in it as well.
Can we make this the last one? I think it's good.
So I read an article from when Jonathan started being a DD. I would like to know if he has less time to deal with package now, and what he thinks about it.
Yeah, yesterday I found a nice package called Bashtop, and I wanted to package it. It's almost like HTOP, but a lot more fancier. It has more colors, and I see someone else is packaging it now, at least. But before I started looking at packaging it, I realized I might not have time to take on new packages right now because I barely keep up with my current set of packages. So I think for this term, I'm going to stick with just the packages that I have and not take on new packages unless there's a very good reason to do so, just to be responsible so that there's more time available for DPL stuff. Because I never want to be in a position where I'm too busy with my head in my work that there's not time for people. If people want to talk or if they need something, I want to put them first above anything else. I mean, any project can wait. If we do technical implementation of anything a bit later, it's not going to be a train smash. But I think it's important, not just for the DPL, but even for all the people in the project to just, if an actual real life person needs something, we should just put them first and give them attention and then get back to other stuff.
Nice. So thank you very much again. I know it's very late for you, so we'll let you go now and have some sleep.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And thanks for hosting these sessions. I think this month is going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see what you end up doing. I think it's great work. Hopefully it will inspire other people to also hold sessions like this in their countries.
Cool.
Nice.
Thanks, Jonathan. I hope you do a great job for the next year, and I hope we can see you together very soon.
Me too. Okay, thank you. Good night.
Thank you.